Hi, and welcome to another episode of How To with the USAT G-Scale Group. My name is Sean, and we're going to go through USA Train's 3-axle motor block design and theory. What we have here today is the USA Train's SD40-2 locomotive. I'm going to show you how it works, how to maintain it, the theory behind it. We'll take a close in-depth look at the internals of the motor blocks, and I'll show you generally how to take the motor blocks out if you want to replace them. Okay, let's get it set up in our handmade cradle. Okay, we have our USA Trains SD40 safely cradled upside down, and now we're ready to get to work. Okay, the USA Train's 3-axle motor block is particular to each locomotive, meaning this axle block will only fit the SD40 due to its wheel size diameter, for one thing, is different than the PA and the SD70. So this motor block will not fit an SD70, and it will not fit a PA. It's particular to the SD40 only. So you got to be careful when you order parts. You order parts specifically for an SD40. Same thing with the PA. The PA will only fit PA locomotives. The SD70 will only fit SD70 locomotives. They will not interchange without modifications. Now, as you see, as I was messing around here, this is what many people so lovingly call the floppy drive. USA Trains designed this so the locomotive will more easily go into a switch or into a curve without derailment. Some people say it's too floppy. There's no spindles on these on the axle of the floppy drive part of the motor block, so it just sort of swivels in there, and we'll take a little closer look at how that works here in a minute. So what can you do to limit the amount of flop? Because a lot of people say it's too much. Alright, so how can you limit the floppy drive from moving around so much? Well, the easiest way I've seen other members do this is they'll take shims, and they'll put shims right inside here between the floppy drive part of the motor block, and they'll glue them to the main motor block. And this will limit how much this will move back and forth, so it doesn't move quite as far as that. Some people leave a little bit in there. I have seen members where they'll take a piece of styrene plastic and glue it here so it doesn't move at all. I don't know how that would work on a 10-foot diameter curve, but I'm sure you would be, once you did that, you made this stiff with a piece of styrene to keep this straight, you'll be probably limited to 16-foot and 20-foot curves. There are 3 different axles the USA Train's 3-axle motor block has, so you have to be careful. You have a axle with no spindles on it, which goes into the floppy drive part of the motor block. Then you have a non-traction tire axle that does have spindles on it. This axle will not fit up here. It's not happening, because what will happen is it will interfere with the truck frames and so forth and so on. It just won't fit up in there unless you plan on making this stationary. Then you have a traction type of tire axle. So you got a traction tire axle with spindles, a non-traction tire axle with spindles, and a non-traction tire axle without spindles. So you have 1, 2, 3 different types of axles. You can swap these around in the main motor block. In other words, you can take the traction tire out and you can put a non-traction tire back in if you don't like them. Same thing, these USA Trains locomotives are too light. You need to add weight. And you're going to add weight actually right in the fuel tank. There's plenty of room, it's wide open in there. Okay, the USA Trains 3-axle motor block has pickups from this point. If you were to take the sliders out because you don't like them or they fetch up on switches, you need to replace the traction tire axle with a non-traction tire axle. Then after you do that, you got to add weight to the locomotive itself. Put weight in the fuel tank. If it's too light and won't grab any traction, you'll have reduced pulling force. Okay, we're going to start with the main motor block area. So, if you want to gain access to the sliders, or just to grease it, or change the axles, you need to pull out 6 screws. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we'll cover one part of this motor block at a time to reduce confusion. Okay, so once you pull the cover off, once you pull this cover off the main motor block, what you're going to be looking at is this. That's a motor block I taken out of another one of my SD40s and completely replaced, and I broke it down so you could see it. This motor block design is a non-direct drive, which means it uses idler gears. So instead of this worm gear driving the wheels directly, this worm gear actually drives an idler gear, and idler gear drives the wheel itself. So again, if you want to replace the sliders, it's just a matter of taking them out, putting the new ones back in. Make sure that spring, make sure this spring is intact and you didn't knock it out by accident. Then simply reinstall. If that's all you're doing, lube these gears up, put the cover back on, and you're done. It's that simple with sliders. If you're doing an axle replacement, that's a little bit different. So we're going to look at the wheel sets here. I'm going to pull one out. Okay, I've pulled a wheel set out so you can see it. And notice these bronze bushings again. Now if you remember my last video with the USA Trains 2-axle block, I said that these have to be installed straight across like a square. Unfortunately, that's not the case for these. You actually have to take these and turn them. You want the pointed end up, so when it sits in, it's going to sit in the grooves like a diamond, not like a square. I'm going to pull out the idler gear. Okay, this is the idler gear. This is the most common failure on a USA Trains 3-axle motor block. What happens is these teeth will roll over. Once those teeth roll over, it starts to slip and it makes a horrible noise. Generally what happens, the cause of that is because you're pulling too much weight for one locomotive. Now, if you look at this idler gear, you'll see that it has flanges on them, just like the axle I showed you. Now these flanges, when you install them, have to be installed like a square. So unlike the main drive axle, which is a diamond, you're going to install the idler gear with a square down. So the drive axle gets installed with like a diamond, the bushing does, and the bushing on the idler gets installed like a square. I know this sounds confusing, but just remember, the drive axle on a USA Trains 3-axle motor block, the bushing, the bronze bushing gets installed like a diamond, and the bushing on the idler gear gets installed like a square, flat down, and the corner should be up on the drive axle. Okay, if you look, this is the correct installation for the bronze bushings. There's a little slot this bushing has to fit into, and it's got to be installed with the flat down. So this flat should be flat across, just like you see it. Okay. And the big gear, of course, goes up against the worm gear. I'll take this and turn it around so that maybe perhaps you can see there's a slot right here. The flat of that flange has to be installed in these slots. If you don't get it in there correctly, this will fail and cause you misery. Okay, this is a correct installation for your drive axle. Notice that the point is facing up. The point has to face up. This does not sit in there flat. This sits in there like a diamond. If you try to put it like that, it's not going to seat properly. So, unlike the 2-axle motor block, it actually gets put in there like a diamond, just like that. So when you're all done, the drive axle is gonna, the drive axle bushing will sit in there like a diamond, and the idler bushing will sit in there like a square. And this is the way it should look when you're all done. Now, same thing, once you put the cover on, it's got to sit flat with no gaps. If you have a gap, something's not quite right, it's not seated in the slots, you've done something wrong. Don't force it, because you'll break it, and then you'll have more troubles than you had before. Okay, let's say the motor went bad in your USA Trains 3-axle motor block. I would highly recommend you replace the whole entire motor block. The reason for that is the motor block is $60. You can buy just the motor for $35, I believe it is. for the extra $30, it's really not worth messing with this block to try and take this apart. But if you decide you want to replace the motor anyway, I'll show you how that's done. Alright, so anytime you want to replace the motor block, the axles, or just the motor itself, you must remove the side frames in order to do any of this work. Just like in my other video, I just remove one side frame and I leave the other one installed. So this is where it gets a little bit tricky. So pay attention. And again, you need a number 2 Phillips, and I'll show you what screws you got to take out. There's 5 screws that have to be removed in order to get this side frame off. I'll show you where they're at. You got 1, 2, 3, 4. So where's the 5th one? Well, that's hidden all the way under here. And now you see why I have a long screwdriver. So as you can see, I had to bend this brake tubing away a little bit so I can get to that last screw. This one screw behind that, there's a tab you must line up when you reinstall this. So I would recommend putting this screw back in first when you reassemble it. And once you remove this side frame, at that point in time, you can take the motor block out, or you can take the cover off, replace the axle, and I'll show you how to do the motor here in a minute. Okay, so once you take the motor block out, this is what you're looking at. So the motor block is installed like this. This is the way you're looking at it. So you have to take the motor block out, and you don't have to take this cover off, by the way. Leave this cover in. Do not take this cover off. Leave this cover installed, so this cover will be on top. And what you're going to do is you're going to flip this upside down. You'll see there's another cover. This is the only way you're going to access the motor. So if you ever have to replace a motor on any USA Trains 3-axle motor block, unfortunately you have to remove the whole entire motor block, flip the motor block upside down, and remove 6 screws from the bottom of it. So you're going to remove 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 screws. Alright, so this is what you're looking at once you remove those screws. Here's the motor. Here's your worm gear here, and here's your flywheel, which drives your floppy drive part of the axle. So once you're at this point in time, you can just merely take the motor just pops out just like so, just like that. So now you got the motor out, and you want to put the new motor in. Okay, I'm going to put this aside here for a minute. Notice these tangs on here. That's your power supply to the motor. So you got to note the correct orientation of the motor once you put it back in. These tangs is what powers the motor up. So those tangs, when you're done, they have to be touching these leads. I'll show you the correct way to install this. So you're going to take this like so. Make sure that the tangs are parallel with those contact leads. Okay, you got to make sure, and this is not sitting in there quite the way it should be. Here we go. Alright, now it's sitting correctly. Notice how the tangs are now touching the lead for here and touching the lead here. Okay, once you get your motor installed, you simply take this cover, put it back on, and put your 6 screws back in there. And then reverse of what I told you, make sure you put this screw in the truck first, then 1, 2, 3, 4 screws after that. You gotta make sure all this is lined up. There are tangs behind there, you gotta be careful. Alright, now we're going to cover the floppy drive part of the USA Trains motor block. Alright, the floppy drive is powered through a flywheel that's connected to this worm gear from the main drive block. On the end of this is a universal joint, a plastic one. As you can see, it swivels around. Then on the floppy drive part of the motor block, you can see that there's another universal joint. I can tell you that it's hard and tricky to line up this floppy universal joint with this floppy universal joint. There's actually teeth inside here, and you have to take this, and you're going to love this. Separate this, you're going to have a lot of fun, because you got to take this, get it in here, get those two lined up and the pin lined up at the same time, and then get the screw in there. The screw goes right here where my thumb's at. But the trick is getting those two joints lined up that'll just flop around. My first one took me about 15-20 minutes to figure out how to do it. Now I'm not that bad at it, of getting them together, lined up, and screwing. Alright, so let's take apart the floppy drive so you can see how that works. Alright, here's the cover off for the floppy drive. The drive is sitting down like this. And as you can see, the same thing what you're going to see in the main motor block. You got a main axle, which is orientation with the bronze bushings pointed up like a diamond. And then it has idler gears with a bronze bushing with the flat up. So the flat has to be up on the idler gear. The point of the bushing has to be up on the main axle. That's proper orientation. If you do not put the point up like a diamond, you try to put it in there flat, you'll never get this together correctly. Okay, if you take this motor block out completely and you want to replace it, on the front of the floppy drive, which is right here, you're going to have to remove the screws that hold this slide plate in. Right in here, and you can get to it with a screwdriver, a long screwdriver just like I got here, Phillips head. You can actually get in here and take these two screws out, switch this over, flop that over that way, take these two screws out, and then you're going to take your side frames off, just like I showed you, and then you can pull this motor block out for a complete replacement. When you put it back together, pay attention, because this plate, as you can see, is actually not slotted straight. It's slotted like a half moon. The half moon has to face like a circle. So when you install it, if you install it this way, that's incorrect. That's correct orientation. That faces towards the front of the locomotive. So when you put it together, it's going to go just like that, and then screw it down. And hopefully that helped you with the design and theory, as well as maintenance of the USA Trains SD40-2. Once again, the motor blocks are not interchangeable. If you want motor blocks for an SD40, you have to buy them for an SD40. They will not fit a 70 or PA. The PA has its own motor blocks, and the 70 has its own motor blocks. Some people have asked me, where did USA Trains come up with this floppy design? Well, Charles Row Supply is the world's largest Lionel dealer. They have been for quite some time, and they are the ones who own USA Trains product line. So you will see a lot of influence from Lionel being used for design and other products and what they come out with as far as products. Some people disagree, but unfortunately that's my opinion. Everything that USA Trains has made to date, Lionel has already made in no-scale. So take a look at this picture I took at the Greenberg Train Show in New Jersey. It's a picture of a Lionel O-scale SD70 Heritage Series. In that picture you will notice that it uses the same floppy drive that the USA Trains is using on their G-scale. So that's why I'm saying that a lot of the USA Trains designs and the decision of what product that they want to come out with is pretty much influenced of what they of what Lionel has produced in those scale. As you see from the picture, they're similar in design. The only difference is on the Lionel O-scale floppy drive, this is a dummy axle. USA Trains did design theirs, so all axles are driven. Okay, thanks for hanging out with the USAT G-Scale group, and hope you learned a lot. And if you have any questions or comments, post away. Thanks a lot. Bye.